the end of the lecture, you should be able to briefly explain what personality is, then the various avenues that can be used to measure an individual's personality. So we will be focusing on the Myers-Briggs type indicator, then the Big Five personality model, which I believe I have indirectly touched on in one of our earlier encounters. I mean, the Big Five personality model, but today we'll be treating it into great details. Then, right after that, we also look at values is important for the organization and two main types of values and why they are important, which are the terminal and instrumental values. Thereafter, we will link individual personality to the workplace by explaining why it is important for managers and, for instance, HR personnel to be very much particular about person job fit or person organizational fit. In other words, when you are hiring an employee into an organization and such employee does not fit the portfolio they are being given, what is likely to occur? In the same vein, if an employee finds him or herself in an organizational environment where they do not fit, what happens? So we'll be looking at that over here. Then the last aspect of the lecture will be on Hofstede's cultural dimensions, as far as cultural values are concerned. And so fasten your seatbelts. Some of the issues are quite trivial, so I wouldn't go into much details. The ones which you are supposed to know, I will draw your attention so that you read over those ones again, okay? So an issue like the Big Five personality model, pay keen attention to it. An issue like person job fit, person organizational fit, pay keen attention to it. And Hofstede's cultural dimensions, that is Hofstede's dimensions, pay keen attention to it. All right, so generically, can you still see my screen? Can you see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Good. So definitionally, it is pretty much difficult to explain what personality is. And I'm not going to pretend as if it is a concept or a construct that can be easily defined. And this is so because if you constitute a panel of experts from psychology to medicine for them to explain from their own frame of reference what they perceive personality to be, they are likely to come up with a number of descriptions, which will also encompass a number of adjectives that describe human behavior. But at the end of the day, irrespective of how you try to define it or how you try to enumerate the adjectives that connotes an individual's personality, they can be theoretically put into some level of perspectives. So I am encouraging you to read beyond what I'll be giving you today in order to appreciate some of the history and the reasoning behind why people define personality in a particular way. You've all done introduction to psychology, right? Have you all done introduction to psychology? Hello, I'm speaking with you, the class. Hello. Can anyone hear me?
Yes, please, we can hear.
So I'm asking you all took the introduction to psychology class?
Yes.
Okay. So that I do not go back into some of the issues that you did over there. But the ones that are relevant for OB, I'll be touching on.
Yes, sir.
Good. So generally speaking, personality is considered as a dynamic concept. And this implies that it is changing all the time. And one reason why we say personality as a concept or a construct is changing all the time is that even as individuals, if we cast our mind back to the way we were when we were a child to what we have become today, you will realize that we have evolved severally. And so different scholars and different authorities have argued that as a construct or a concept, personality is constantly changing. Another issue about the definition of personality is that the traits that make up an individual's personality can also be construed as relatively permanent. And the relative permanence component stems from the idea that personality is influenced by not only our biology or our hereditary, but it is also influenced by the environment. So some of you may boldly tell me that when you were growing up, you were the shy type. But if you now reflect on who you have become now, you can confidently say that you are not as shy as you used to be. And the reverse is true. Now, this gives much credence to the idea that personality traits are also what? Relatively permanent, which means it keeps changing with time, depending on the people you surround yourself with, the situations you find yourself in, and also the experiences you amass as time passes. Now, we can universally say that personality is a dynamic concept describing the growth and development of a person's whole psychological system. And some also construe it as the sum total of the ways in which an individual reacts to and interacts with others. Now, the traits or the characteristics that becomes discernible or accessible to someone who will be standing outside you, the individual, and who is trying to make sense of what you are doing, are what we call the personality traits. So those are the characteristics that we can refer to and say that based on how the person is behaving, he is likely to be a shy person, a gregarious, an aggressive person, and so on and so forth. So we generally say that personality traits are enduring characteristics that describes an individual's behavior. Now, so what then determines our personality? Is it something which is determined by our hereditary, or is it something that is determined by the environment we find ourselves in? Can you see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Good. So what are you currently having on your screen?
Sir.
Quality determinant.
Very good, very good. I just wanted to make sure the screen is moving according to what I'm saying. Good. So the question of what determines an individual's personality is an ongoing debate which started around the time Aristotle, and I hope you are all familiar with Aristotle. Aristotle, Plato, Socrates were engaging their compatriots in the arena. Now, two main schools of thought have emerged to explain the determinants of personality. In other words, when we ask the question that what causes us to behave in a particular way, or what causes us to behave different from others, two main schools of thought have sprung up to explain it. And they are the hereditary versus the environment school of thoughts. Now, who can tell me of the two school of thoughts, which one possibly answers the question better? So is personality as a result of our hereditary or is it as a result of our environment? Who can help me answer this question? Philomena, are you trying to answer? Okay, who would like to try? Is our personality the result of hereditary or is the result of environment?
Sir, please, I think it's a result of the environment.
Okay, so why do you say so?
Sir, please, I think so because, you know, the little I know.
Oh, Alice, we can't hear you well. Position yourself well. Hello, Alice, are you still there? Hello? Hello? Oh. I'm struggling to hear you, Alice.
About hereditary is about things that are genetic or things that is being.
Alice, we are struggling to hear you, okay? So kindly type it in the comment section. I'll read it out, okay? Good.
Sorry,
Any other?
sir, please, sorry, my network.
I think it is better now, so go on. Oh, still.
Hello, sir.
Yeah, go on.
Sir, please, the network was very poor. So the environment is, like I was saying, the environment is where you are being raised up. So the example, if you are being, let me say, if you are being raised like some places like East Legon or maybe Manette, the environment that you find yourself is such a quiet, and then the people there, sorry to say, are being disciplined or they do their things accordingly. But when you are being raised in a place like, sorry to say, like the Nzongo area, you pick that kind of attitude that they do there.
Okay.
The way they do their things, the way they talk, the way their temperament, their behavior, a whole lot of things. You copy those kind of attitudes, so it will determine who you really are. That is the little understanding that I have.
Okay. Thank you very much, Alice, for your contribution. Please, who would also like to contribute? Still, the question is personality the result of hereditary or environment? This one is a bonus question. There is no right or wrong answer until I come in. Yes, Esther, go
on. So I think it's both.
It's both.
I will always, yeah.
Okay, why do you think it is both?
Sometimes we inherit certain characters from our parents, and then that is for the hereditary. And then for the environment too, just as my sister said, we copy certain characters and traits from others or the environment we find ourselves. So I believe basically both contribute to our personalities.
Okay, both the hereditary and environment. Thank you very much. Any other? The last one, then I'll come in. Oh, for 1 mark, who is the next person for 1 mark? Emanuela.
Sir, please, just join on the question again.
Hey, you've not even heard the question, but because you heard 1 mark, you are even raising up your hand. So the question is personality the result of hereditary or environment? The question is actually on the screen.
Okay. So some of them are hereditary. Some of them too are the environment.
Okay. Can you
Depending
explain
on
further? So you think it is both?
Some people are, yes, some people are easily influenced by the people they live with or the kind of people they mingle with. And some too, no matter the kind of person they mingle with, they are who they are.
Okay.
So some are hereditary and some are influence of the environment.
Okay. Okay, good. Last one. Who will nail it and take the 1 mark?
So I will not get the 1 mark.
Oh, so a number of responses or options are currently on the table. So I will assess all of them and then give it to one of you.
Yewu? Lau?
Yes, last person.
This is George, sir.
Okay, George. George Amwa, go on.
Yes, sir. I think it's hereditary.
It's hereditary. Okay, why do you think so?
Yes, because it's genetic too. Because the genetic, how you were given born, like how you were born, the family in which you were born. You understand the genetic? That means you could something that it cannot be changed. If your family are not well disciplined or their character is not good, they can give birth and you take the same character.
Okay.
But when they are good, you can keep that same good character.
Okay.
You understand? Okay. That's how I understand it.
All right. Thank you very much, George. Now, so depending on the school of thought that you agree with, okay, all the answers that you have put on the table can be marked as correct. And this is so because the first school of thought, which believes in genetics or hereditary or our biological makeup, will agree with the argument that was advanced by George and I think there was another student. Then the school of thought that believes that our nurturance, our upbringing, the way we are brought up from our childhood and shaped by our society, our parents, and so on and so forth, can also influence our personality. But research is saying that it is actually determined by both hereditary and the environment. In other words, our genetic or biological makeup, together with the nurturance or the experiences that we encounter in our general makeup, helps to shape us in a particular way. And this nurturance also influences the way we behave. Now, this indicates that for you to have, or for you to be characterized as having a particular personality, it is determined by one, you having some genetics or biological makeup in you, and two, you also finding yourself in the environment which activates those genetic makeup to manifest. So when we say someone, you use the adjectives that someone is an outgoing person or is is gregarious. Okay? It means that genetically, such a person has the blueprint to manifest in a gregarious manner. Secondly, the person has also grown up in an environment that provided room for that particular behavior to be manifested. So the bottom line, or the scholarly answer to such a question, will be to attempt by explaining what makes up our genetic or our hereditary, and what also influences our upbringing as far as our environment is concerned. And then concluding that, depending on the situation you find yourself, the genetics can be activated to manifest for others to also observe it overtly. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Good. So earlier arguments centered on whether or not personality was as a result of hereditary or environment. And the earlier scholars around the time of Plato were very much fixated with using biology to explain whatever happens as far as our personality is concerned, why people behave the way they do. And later on, with the advancements in science and research, also when cutting-edge laboratories were set up to study primates and other lower animals, which were then compared to how human beings also behave. Then they got to learn that personality, or the way we behave, communicates more than biology, but it is equally shaped by the environment you find yourself in. And so that was why they ended up concluding that personality appears to be as a result of both influence, that is hereditary, as well as our environment. Okay, now, still on the determinants of personality, some of the strategies that earlier researchers adopted were to identify and label enduring personality characteristics, such as shyness, aggressiveness, submissive, lazy, ambitious, loyal, timid, and so on and so forth. Now, these are unarguably personality traits, but these experts ended up listing numerous adjectives which could not even be contained in one dictionary, because different cultural contexts also had different adjectives which equally communicated the personality of a person. So earlier efforts to identify the primary traits that govern behavior often resulted in long lists that were difficult to generalize from and provide little practical guidance to organizational decision makers. So it became imperative that we rely on a novel way that can be used to, one, explain personality, and two, which can be universally consistent. So the prime objective of this novel attempt was to reduce these long lists to something that can be universally understood and accepted, and which was also very much practical to organizational decision-making. So for instance, when we are trying to fill a vacant position, what sort of personality should we look out for in the candidates that are shortlisted? If we are grooming someone for a managerial position, what are the personality attributes that should be behaviorally inculcated in such a person? Those were some of the things that interest the researchers. Now, so it is obvious that it was not a simple task, because think about it, we are trying to reduce numerous adjectives that describes an individual's personality traits into a universally understandable acceptable and practical to the conduct of business. So up until now, one of the greatest challenges in the study of personality is how it is measured. How personality is measured. And this is so because if you do not measure personality accurately, then you will also end up predicting wrong impressions about an individual. In other words, if you do not measure the personality of managers that are achieving enviable results, then you are likely to rely on such bad data to take decisions, such as hiring new managers for similar positions. And you're also likely to make bad forecasts about who is likely to be a good job candidate and who is also likely to be a bad job candidate. Now, managers also need to know how to measure personality because accurately measuring personality gives managers an advantage in recruitment and hiring processes. And those of you who have gone for a recruitment or a selection exercise before will attest to the fact that they take you through series of selection techniques, one of which is the administering of an aptitude test and perhaps a personality inventory. And the essence of administering those series of tests, particularly the personality test, is to ascertain whether your personality traits will fit or assist you to be successful in the organization. More importantly, in the job that you are going to perform. So if there is a portfolio for a public relations officer, there are certain personality traits that research indicates that once a candidate possesses them, their chances of being successful in the job is high, as opposed to those who do not have them. In the same vein, if you are looking for candidates for a marketing position, research has also prescribed certain personality traits, which grants us the room that once you are given the opportunity, you'll be successful. And so by understanding personality and how it is even measured and interpreted, it will assist you managers or HR persons to make accurate decisions when it comes to recruitment and selection. The most common means of measuring personality today is the self-report surveys, even though there are a number of them. The self-report surveys. Now, what happens in the self-report surveys is that individuals are asked series of questions and they are tasked to candidly respond to them based on how those questions reflect their identity. So a typical example could be that question 1, I enjoy quiet pursuits. Then it will be followed by strongly agree to strongly disagree. Then another question could be, I am always concerned when I am unable to achieve my targets. Then this question will be followed by, or this statement will be followed by a response scale ranging from strongly agree to strongly disagree. So as an individual, when we say you are undertaking a self-report survey, it means that you are presented with a series of statements or questions, and you are asked to answer them candidly as they reflect your being. Okay. Now, based on your answers and the analysis that will ensue thereafter, we will be able to ascertain whether you have an openness personality traits, whether you have an extrovert or an introvert personality traits, whether you are the agreeable type, and so on and so forth. Okay. Now, so we are going to look at the specific types, the specific strategies that you can use to measure an individual's personality. The first one that we are going to look at is the Myers-Briggs type indicator. The Myers-Briggs type indicator. So simply put, you can say the Myers-Briggs personality assessments. The Myers-Briggs personality assessments. And a little background to this personality indicator. I suspect that in your introduction to psychology, you were introduced to the famous Sigmund Freud, who has a very good explanation of human growth and development. And he also have a very good explanation for how we develop socially. Now, a number of authorities came after Sigmund Freud, and they tried to apply his style of analyzing individuals' psychology by making reference to our psyche. And so those people who try to apply Sigmund Freud's style of analyzing people are called Neo-Freudians. Let me just write the name here for you. And Sigmund Freud is also noted to have championed the school of thought that we call psychoanalysis. Can you see my screen? The blank one.
Yes, please.
The blank one.
No, sir.
Okay, so let me
No.
quickly switch. Can you see the screen now?
Yes, sir.
Good. So the person I'm talking about is Sigmund Freud. So the name, once again, is Sigmund Freud. We don't pronounce it as Freud, okay? And he is noted for championing the school of thought that we call psychoanalysis. Psychoanalysis. And I'm sure you learned all these things in your introduction to psychology. You can't do intro to psychology without coming across Sigmund Freud and psychoanalysis. And so Sigmund Freud is the first authority to have been noted to have done an extensive study on human personality. Now, Myers-Briggs type indicator was created to mimic some of the Neo-Freudians. So those who came after Sigmund Freud are called Neo-Freudians. So the Neo-Freudians primarily are the school of thought that emerged after Sigmund Freud passed away. And one fascinating thing about Sigmund Freud and his psychoanalysis is that he tried to explain human behavior and our personality by making reference to sex. So for instance, in application to the application of psychoanalysis to dream analysis, when someone dreams of, for instance, sitting on a horse and riding the horse, Sigmund Freud will interpret it all right, but make reference to sex. So Freud will interpret such a dream by saying that by sitting on the horse, it is a sign of having a sexual intercourse. So a lot of people were not comfortable with Freud's explanation of personality and social phenomena. That gave room for the neo-Freudians, who were less sexist in their explanation of social phenomena. So a notable personality under the neo-Freudians whose theory led to the Myers-Briggs type indicator is what we call Carl Jung. Once again, it is Carl Jung, not Carl Jung. And this is Sigmund Freud. Now, Carl Jung went beyond the fixation with explaining social phenomena by making reference to sex. And what he did was that he looked at our outward behavior and tried to categorize people into types, whether you belong to this particular category or that particular category. And so when we talk about the Myers-Briggs type indicator, it tries to extend. Can you see the Myers-Briggs type indicator now?
Yes, please.
Good. So all the convoluted discourse I'm having is to try to give you the background to the Myers-Briggs type indicator. And I'm saying that the Myers-Briggs type indicator takes from Carl Jung, Carl Jung's theorization of personality by categorizing individual behaviors according to the types. Oh, and by saying types, we are looking at your outward behavior and boxing you into categories, okay? And as we speak now, it is the most widely used and successful personality framework. In fact, most of you might have encountered it without even knowing it was the Myers-Briggs type indicator questionnaire that you were filling when you went for a job opening. And it is primarily a 100-question personality test. It contains 100 questions that try to ascertain how you feel or deal towards certain situations. And these situations are the specific questions that I was referring to earlier on. And each of these questions comes with a response for you to select whether you strongly agree or you strongly disagree based on how you feel about the questions or the statements. Now, after answering the questionnaire, the evaluator, usually the psychologist who is administering it, it could be the industrial or organizational psychologist, they put what we call a stencil scale. Are you familiar with what we call a stencil scale? Hello? Are you familiar with what we call a stencil scale?
No, sir.
Okay.
No, sir.
But I'm sure all of you have used math set before, mathematical set.
Yes, sir.
You realize
Yes,
in
sir.
mathematical sets, we have one of the tools that's, it is actually a rubber that has the alphabets and numbers written in them, but it is kind of perforated. The alphabets and
Yes.
numbers are perforated in it.
Yes.
So that is a typical example of a stencil. Now, for the Myers-Briggs type indicator, all the answers to the questions have been programmed on a stencil sheet. And this stencil is placed upon the answers that you provided for us to know whether you belong to any of these 4 personality typologies, whether you are extroverted, introverted, the sensing type, the intuitive type, the thinking, the feeling type, the perceiving, or the judging type. And please, is it clear up to this point? Is it clear up to this point? Hey, are you with me?
Yes.
Yes, please.
So I'm asking, is it clear up to this point?
Yes.
Clear.
Now, once we place this stencil, the stencil sheet on your responses, it is able to assist us to ascertain whether you are an extrovert, whether you are the perceiving type, the judging type, and so on and so forth. Okay, so, and depending on the traits that we require for a particular portfolio, then it will also inform on our selection decisions. So for instance, assuming we want to fill a vacancy for a public relation officer, then definitely we will be interested in typologies like someone who is a little bit extroverted, someone who is also the sensing type, then the thinking type, then the judging type. Okay, so that our selection decisions based on your score will inform us whether you are fit for the job or you are not fit. The same can also be said about when we are looking for an accountant. Okay, to be an accountant, we don't necessarily need an extrovert or an introvert. Any of them will be good for it. Then we don't also necessarily need someone who is the sensing type, but someone whose intuition can guide him will be good to go. Then, because we are dealing with numbers, someone who can also think through the numbers will be appropriate for it. Then the judging type will also be appropriate for such a portfolio. If you are looking for positions such as nurses, teachers, and so on and so forth, then the feeling type becomes imperative. Okay. All right. Now, based on your responses that you give from question 1 up to question 100, and the outcome that we will generate from the stencil sheets, we will be able to categorize you into one of these, we will categorize you on your score on each of these facets. And these facets, when combined, can tell us who you truly are. But generally speaking, the Myers-Briggs type personality framework tries to classify the preceding 4 permutations that we'll be having over here. So if you perm these four typologies, if you perm it, that is the extroverted, introverted, sensing, intuition, thinking, feeling, perceiving, and judging. If you perm them, then you will get 16 combinations. You will get 16 combinations. So the Myers-Briggs type indicator is able to generate 16 personality types that help us to ascertain who an individual is and why they behave the way they do. So these are just 3 examples of the 16 personality types that can be generated by the Myers-Briggs type indicator. So this one is, hello, are you all there?
Yes, sir, we are. Yes,
Good. These initials that you have over here, the ESTJ, the ENTP, were deduced from extroversion, introversion, sensing, intuition. So anytime you see N, it means intuition. Anytime you see E, it means extroversion. Anytime you see I, it's introversion. Anytime you see F, it is feeling. T, thinking. P, it is perceiving. And J, it is judging. So when you do those permutations, you will get 16 combinations. And I have just picked 3 of those combinations. So when someone ends up being labeled as the introverted Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, please.
Okay, so when someone ends up being labeled as the introverted, intuition, thinking, and judging type, they are construed as visionaries according to the Myers-Briggs type indicator. And so when portfolios for managerial positions are available, such candidates are usually considered because of the visionary abilities that they possess. Now, when you get the combination of extroversion, the sensing, thinking, and judging type, they are characterized by Myers-Briggs as organizers. And these are the people that are very much realistic, logical, analytical in their pursuits, and also decisive. Okay. Then when you combine extroversion, the intuition, thinking, and the perceiving type, they are characterized as the conceptualizers, people who would like to conceptualize things on their own. So they will start from the ground and build it up themselves. They are characterized as people who are innovative, individualistic, versatile, attracted to entrepreneurial ideas. So such people flourish very much in the IT world. Okay, so when you are looking for people that are change makers or ready to challenge the status quo for the organization to move to greater heights, then those are the candidates that we look out for. So this is just by the way of introduction to the Myers-Briggs type indicator. And like I mentioned earlier on, it tries to ascertain or determine our personality by making reference to our types and not necessarily making reference to or making sexual connotations, unlike Sigmund Freud. And it's basically tries to do a permutation of these 4 typologies or traits. And by that, we end up getting 16 combinations. Any questions so far? So when managers are, when HR personnel are conducting recruitment and selection, depending on the position that they want to fill, okay, the Myers-Briggs type indicator gives them the forecast that if you are looking for someone for entry-level position for maybe an accountant, these are the sort of qualities you should be looking out for. If you are looking for someone to be in the marketing department, these are the qualities you should be looking out for, so that it will guide their selection activities. Another personality model that has been advanced to explain how personality can be measured and actually explained is what we call the Big 5 personality model. The Big 5 personality model. Now, you all agree with me that what Myers-Briggs was doing over here is actually commendable, but you will end up getting 16 different personality types, which is quite confusing to interpret. And don't forget, we are talking about administering a questionnaire that contains 100 questions in it. So how many people will get even that luxury of time to go through these numerous questions and answer them candidly? At the end of the day, how sure are you that you are actually, the answers they are giving to you is their true reflection, and it is not answers born out of their own tiredness or boredom? Okay, so to reduce these numerous questions and numbers, factor analysis was conducted by researchers such as Paul Costa and Robert McRae. And what they did basically was that if you pick a dictionary and you enumerate all the adjectives that describes an individual's personality, you realize that most of them overlap in several respects. Okay, so someone can be characterized as shy. The same person can be characterized as phlegmatic. The same person can be characterized as solitary, and so on and so forth. The moment you run this factor analysis, it will put together all the traits which can be explained with one label or under one label. That is what factor analysis does. And so it helped in reducing those tall lists of words or adjectives into 5 factors, which robustly and universally explains individual's personality. So what are these 5 factors? They are openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism, which is also captioned as the extent to which an individual is emotionally stable. So emotional stability. Now, when an individual is characterized to be possessing the openness trait, when an individual is said to be having an openness trait, what does it mean? It suggests that such individuals are down to earth and they are open to new interests and ideas. These are individuals that have a lot of experiences that suggest that they have range of interest and fascination with novelty. So such people are always trying to push the frontiers of knowledge. They are willing to try new things. So we say they are very much creative, they are curious and artistically sensitive. Now, because of these traits, such people tend to be very much good when it comes to entrepreneurship or when it comes to the pursuit of jobs that relies on an individual's innovation. Now, let me quickly add that all these personality traits fall in a bipolar continuum. I think I've explained it before. All these personality traits, ranging from the openness to neuroticism, just like we did for, okay, this is level 200. So I've not done it. Good. This is level 200. So when I say all these personality traits fall in a bipolar continuum, let me quickly demonstrate what I mean by that. Can you see my screen now? Can you see my screen?
Yes. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
The blank screen.
Yes.
So I am saying that all the big 5 personality traits fall in a bipolar continuum. So I mean for the first one, which is openness. When you take openness, okay, and because a bipolar, it means 2 poles, 2 extreme poles. Where one, you could be high or low on openness. So when someone scores high on openness, it means that they possess the attributes that makes them come across as people that are artistic, innovative, creative, willing to try new opportunities, and always pushing the frontiers of knowledge. They are always not content with what is happening with the status quo. Now, those that score low on openness are the traditional type. So they prefer to maintain the status quo, and they apply innovation and creativity less in their pursuits. So please, is it clear now? The bipolar. Good.
Yes, sir.
And the same applies to the introversion, extroversion. So on that continuum, as far as introversion, extroversion is concerned, you could be characterized as an extrovert. An extrovert when you score high on that scale, or an introvert. Okay. In terms of emotional neuroticism, you could be characterized as whether you are emotionally stable, so emotionally stable, or the neurotic type. Okay, so those are the extreme continuums that, based on your score, they can label you. Now let's go back to the preceding slide I was projecting. Okay, can you see the new screen now?
Yes, sir.
Good. So those that score high on openness, that is what I mean by extremely open people are creative, curious, artistic, and sensitive. And these are the people that usually become successful as entrepreneurs, as researchers, as artists, musicians, and so on and so forth. Now, those are the other end of the continuum, which is the openness category, are the conventional or the traditional type. And they find comfort in familiarity. So those are the people that always find it very much difficult to challenge the status quo. They always want things to preserve and be pursued the way it has been done from Adam. So that is about the openness component. Now, the second personality trait, another big 5 personality model, is what we call conscientiousness. And it comes from the word conscience. Conscientiousness. It comes from the word conscience. And conscientiousness is basically a measure of consistency, or how reliable an individual can be in their pursuits. So those that score very high on the conscientiousness scale are persons that can be characterized as very much responsible. They are organized, dependable, and persistent in their pursuits. Now, conversely, those that score low on the conscientiousness scale are the ones that can be characterized as easily distracted, disorganized, and unreliable. So now, if we are doing recruitment and selection into a managerial position, definitely our interest will be on those that score what? High on conscientiousness scale, and also high on openness scale, because managers are not only expected to maintain the status quo, but they are also expected to be visionary, to push the frontiers of to drive the frontiers of their organization. Then the next attribute is the extroversion. Extroversion. Now, at the extreme end are those that find a lot of comfort in relationship, and they are characterized as extroverts. So they tend to be very much gregarious, outgoing, sociable, and so basically they enjoy being the limelight in wherever they find themselves. The moment they enter a social environment, they need to be noticed. Those are the extreme component of the continuum. Then at the other end of the continuum are the introverts, those that are characterized as very much reserved, timid, quiet, and they enjoy solitary pursuits. And such people are always coiled and minding their own business. Okay. Now, then the next attribute under the Big Five personality model is what we call agreeableness. Agreeableness. And agreeableness refers to the degree to which an individual can defer to others. So to what extent are you willing to reason along with others, or are you likely to dissenter from what majority of the people are deciding on? So whether you are the one who easily go along with an idea that is germinating or being carried out, or you are the one that always try to distance yourself from what majority is doing. Now, people that are high on agreeableness are the cooperative, the warm, and trusting types. Now, such people are very much liked by everyone in the organization, because when you are trying to reason with them, you will go along a long way, because they get along with little or no challenges. Now, at the extreme end are the low agreeableness people. And they are the people who are cold, always disagreeing with what is happening, and they tend to also be what? Antagonistic. Now, so usually people tend to like the agreeable type in the organization because you are less likely to encounter numerous challenges with them when you are taking decisions. Even though research also indicates that having a number of the less agreeable people in the organization may also help you to sometimes relook at some of the decisions that you are pursuing, and it can actually save you. Now, neuroticism or emotional stability. And once again, this one is also a continuum. And it is a description of a person's ability to withstand stress. And if you remember, most of the job advertisements, one of the captions they put in there is that you should be able to work under pressure. You should be able to work under pressure or stress. And that is so because usually these days, once you are hired and you are given the requisite orientation, they expect you to hit the ground running. Okay. So people with positive emotional stability tend to be calm, confident, and secure. Such people are characterized as emotionally intelligent. They always scan their environment and know when to burst out their emotions and when not to. Now, those with high negative scores tend to also be nervous, anxious, depressed, and insecure. And basically, they are the ones that we characterize as emotionally unstable. And one interesting thing about emotionally unstable people is that their mood swing is very much fleeting. They can be happy at one point in time, and all of a sudden, their mood swings to sadness or melancholy. And so that is why we say they are easily angered and at the same time easily excitable. And so you wouldn't want to have such people in professions like military, because depending on their mood swing and their mood states, they will be firing left, right, center, and so on and so forth. So that is by way of introduction to the Big Five personality model. Any questions so far? Emanuela,
Yes, sir.
I see your hand up. Do you have a question?
Yes, please.
Yeah, go
I
on.
wanted to know if it is possible. I wanted to know if it is possible for one to grow out of one maybe extroversion to the introvert or
Introversion.
something.
Thank you very
Like
much.
I wanted to know.
I understand you perfectly. Let me quickly go back to, initially, did I mention that personality traits are relatively permanent and that how you were in your childhood might not necessarily be the way you are today? Did I mention that?
No, sir.
Hey, when you go back and you are listening to the video, you realize that was the second statement I made. That our personality is relatively
Sir, as for
permanent.
me, I joined late, so I don't know.
Oh, okay, then it's understandable.
That was the question I wanted to ask.
Now, all these, the Big Five personality traits that I'm talking about, or in fact, in any other personality measure you pick, the traits that are usually relied on to characterize people are all relatively permanent. Don't forget, our personality is determined by our hereditary or biological makeup and the environment. So it is possible that you were the shy type when you were growing up, but right now you find yourself in an environment where in order to survive, you always have to adopt the Takashi type. And so for that reason, it will activate the gregarious components of your personality for it to dominate. The reverse is also true. It is possible that you were very much gregarious or outgoing when you were during your childhood. But as you grew up and you moved to different environments or situations, you learned to adapt to such an environment by being more polite and reserved. And over time, that sticks with you. So personality traits are relatively permanent, except that the relative permanence or the extent to which these traits stays with you does not change within a year or two. It takes some time before you transition from one state to the other. Another thing that I want you to pay attention to, as far as these personality traits are concerned, is that can you see my screen now?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
When you are being labeled as an extrovert or an introvert, don't forget that the scale is a continuum. Okay. So depending on your score, if your score is tilted towards introversion, an introvert, then you'll be labeled as what? An introvert. If your score is tilted towards extroversion, then you'll be labeled as extrovert. But even within extroversion and introversion, there are degrees of differences. So someone could be to the extreme introversion, where such a person can be characterized as almost a claustrophobic, someone who kind of find themselves in a panic mode whenever they go out there. Then you can have someone whose level of introversion is not so serious. Okay, the same can be said about the extrovert type, where to the extreme end, you can have someone being characterized as even having attention deficits. Okay, and when you say you have attention deficit, it means you are always in a fleeting mood, moving from one place to the other. Won't mean transit back home. So even within extroversion and introversion, there are degrees of differences. All right, and at any point in time, depending on your score, we can comfortably say that you are changing from extroversion to introversion, or you are changing from introversion to extroversion. So these days, what some companies does is that once they administer these personality inventories to the workforce and they identify that your personality attributes does not actually match or fit the job that you are performing, what they do is that they gradually nurture you to pick up some of the attributes by way of training. Okay. All right. Any other question? Any other question? Okay, so please, when you go, don't throw it away. This one of the areas that I want you to pay keen attention to. Okay, so when you go, read it very well. And these are further explanations for the Big Five personality traits and why it is relevant and what it actually affects. So for instance, emotional stability. Why is it relevant? People that are emotionally stable are less negative in thinking, and they have fewer negative emotions. They are less hypervigilant. And that was why I was saying that in the security services, we look out for people that are emotionally stable so that when you give them the ammunition, they will not be firing left, right, center. They will know when they are on the battlefield and when to shoot. Now, let's look at, for instance, openness. Why is it important? People with openness attribute or traits, they demonstrate their unflinching or higher level of appetite when it comes to level. So that is why we say increased learning. They are more creative. They are more flexible in their thinking and operation, and they also tend to be autonomous. Now, because of the novelty it comes with, that is why when you are looking for change makers, people into the IT or any field that relies a lot on innovation and creativity, those that score high on openness are hot. Target them. So when you go, just take your time and go through it, okay? It is pretty much straightforward. Now, how does the Big Five personality traits predict behavior at work? How does the Big Five personality traits predict behavior at work? And what we are trying to do now is to identify the implications of the Big Five personality traits to the world of work. Okay. So let's take, for instance, emotional stability. I've already linked it to hiring decisions when it comes to the security services. Now, research also indicates that when individuals or employees are emotionally stable, it is strongly related to life satisfaction, job satisfaction, and low level of stress. So research is contending that individuals that tend to score high on emotional stability can also be translated onto their general life satisfaction, their job satisfaction, and the amount of stress that they experience within the organizational context. And this is particularly true because high scores are more likely to be positive and optimistic. And such people tend to experience fewer negative emotions. Like from the word go, we are talking about what? Your emotions being stable. So all the bad energy that can make you, that can frustrate you or make you sad, you are able to do away with it. So they tend to be generally happier than those who score low. Okay. And people low on emotional stability are hypervigilant. And these are the people that are always looking for problems and impending signs of danger. So, and that is what the psychologists call catastrophizing. And when we say an individual is catastrophizing, it means that they are trying to blow out of proportion incidents or situations that are not even realistic. Into ABA, cultural exams, you've written an exam and you got A in chains, but in one of your papers, you got B. So listen carefully, you've gotten A in chains, but one of your papers, you got B. And because of that B, you say you are a failure. That would be a typical example of catastrophizing. And that is how people that are emotionally unstable, when we say they are hyper vigilant. And such people are also very much vulnerable to physical and psychological effects. So that is about emotionality and stability, or neuroticism continuum. Now, the next one is extroversion, introversion continuum. Now, extroverts tend to be happier in their jobs because these are people that they always want to be in the limelight. They enjoy being around other people and they enjoy social pursuits. So by virtue of going to the workplace alone is an incentive to their morale. And such people experience positive emotions than introverts. So generally speaking, we are saying that because introverts always prefer to enjoy their solitary pursuits or be on their own, whenever they are going in social situations, then it affects their mood. Now, they also more freely express their feelings as far as extroverts are concerned. Now, let me look at some of the implications. Research is saying that extroversion is relatively a stronger predictor of leadership emergence in groups. So if I give you an assignment, a group assignment now, I can bet my last penny on it that the person who will emerge as the group leader will be the one with extroversion traits if I run a personality test. And that is what research is also saying here, that for someone to emerge as a leader, they must possess higher levels of extroversion. Okay, now one downside is that extroverts are more impulsive than introverts. When we say they are more impulsive, it means because they draw their energy from those that surround them or their social pursuits, they are constantly relying on their senses in order to feel their environment. Okay, so because of that, they are more likely to be absent from work and engage in risky behavior such as drunkenness, unprotected sex, and other impulsive or sensation-seeking acts. That is what research is saying, that because extroverts enjoy social pursuits, in reality, they are the ones that are likely to get a record of high level of absenteeism because they will prefer to party all night long and miss the next day's job and engage in unprotected sex, one night stand, and so on and so forth. Then the trait of openness. And when we say someone scores high on openness, it simply means they prefer to experience novel or new ideas all the time. And such people channel their creativity in science and arts or whatever they pursue. Their creativity dominates. And research is saying that because creativity is pretty much important in leadership, people that score high in openness are more likely to be efficient leaders. And leaders are people that are always trying to change the status quo and trying to convince others to buy into their ideas. And so if you are not very much creative or open, it will be very difficult for you to, first of all, have confidence in your idea, let alone selling it to others to follow you in your pursuits. Then the agreeable type. Those are the ones that I explained earlier on. That's research is also saying that when people choose romantic partners, friends, or organizational team members, agreeable individuals are usually their first choice. So that was what I meant by they are liked by all the people that they interact with, because you can easily reason with them. And they are not the dissenting type, but they will engage in a healthy discourse with you to arrive at an amicable decision. So agreeable individuals are better liked than disagreeable people, which explains why they tend to be better in interpersonal orientation jobs, such as customer service, even when it comes to nursing, teaching, or any other profession that relies on interpersonal skills. They are also more compliant and rule-abiding, and they are less likely to get into accidents as a result of their compliance and abiding by rules. Okay, so enough about the Big Five personality. Any question on the personality? We are saying that personality refers to the enduring, relatively permanent traits that individuals possess, which makes them behave the way they do. And we're also saying that in terms of the origin or determinants of personality, it is both traced to our hereditary and environment, in the sense that the genetics or hereditary will give you the traits in your blueprint. Then the environment will also create the social situations for the genes to be activated to manifest. We are saying that in terms of measuring personality traits, we rely on self-report skills. And typical examples are the Myers-Briggs type indicator and the Big Five personality scale. Okay. Now, an acronym for the Big Five personality trait is what we call OCEAN. Well, I think I have to point it to you. You see the OCEAN I have here. OCEAN, the O stands for openness, C stands for conscientiousness, E stands for extroversion, A stands for agreeableness, and N stands for neuroticism. Okay. Now, let's look at values and why it is important. So values are primarily the convictions that we have about what is right or wrong, what is good or bad, what is desirable or undesirable. And so an individual's value system are the set of values that the person ranks in terms of their intensity or their order of priority. So as an individual, what do I prioritize as right to pursue in life? And what do I prioritize as not so much important to pursue in life? What do I characterize as desirable or undesirable? Now, this value system can also be extended to the social or community level, where as a society, we can characterize what we construe to be normal and abnormal, what we construe to be right or wrong. So in Ghana, for instance, it is right or good to raise up your hand in class using your right hand, okay? But in other cultural contexts, it is, in fact, in Ghana, if you use your left hand, you will be characterized as someone who is what? Disrespectful. Now, raising up your hand with the raising up your left hand in class in another cultural context like the Western world will not come across as a sign of disrespect. Okay, this indicates that values systems are also culturally bound, and what may be right or wrong in one cultural context may not be right or wrong in another cultural context. And the same can be said as we move from one individual to the other. Now, it is important to understand values system because they serve as the bedrock to understand an individual's attitude and their motivation. So last 2 weeks, we explained what attitude means by saying that it is an evaluative statement, be it positive or negative, that an individual makes about an event, an object, or a stimuli. And if I make a positive or a negative statement about my job, it is simply because there are certain value systems that I'm using to evaluate it. And those value systems is motivating my attitude towards my organization. If I have a negative attitude towards lesbianism and gayism, it is premised on a value system that maybe I do not see it to be the norm in a society, or I see it to be the norm in society. Okay. Now, research indicates that values can be explained. There are two main types of values, and which are the terminal values and instrumental values. Terminal values and instrumental values. So terminal values comes from the word term. When we talk about terminal values, we are referring to the desirable end states of existence. So in your life, what are some of the things that you intend to achieve? Or what do you stand up for in your life? These are the desirable end states of existence. So in your daily pursuits, what are you noted for? And what goals are you trying to be noted for? Or what goals are you ascribing to achieve in life? All those things that you intend to achieve in the course of your life or your journey can be considered as your terminal values, things that you value in the course of your life. Whereas the instrumental values are the strategies or the means that are usually used to achieve the terminal values. So terminal values are basically what you intend to achieve in the course of your life. And the instrumental values are the means or the avenues or the behaviors that you have to demonstrate in order to achieve your terminal values. So a typical example of a terminal value is that, for instance, someone would want to be noted in the course of your life as a self-respected person. Now, to achieve this sense of self-respect among your peers, the means that you can use to attain it is honesty, dealing honestly with anyone who comes across you. Now, another person might also want to stand up for equality in the course of their life. That is treating everyone equal, irrespective of your status or your locus in the organization or the society. And to attain this, we are saying that you also have to be honest with anyone that you come across. Okay. Now, I have categorized 3 main people that you are likely to come across in the organizational setting. So the executives or those that form part of management, then the general populace within the organization, the employees who are in a unionized organization, and finally, the unionists or the activists who are what we consider to be the leaders of the organized members of the organization. Okay, so those are the distinctions. When you go, take your time and go through it. Now, we are also going to link in the personality and values to workplace relationship. So how do you link personality and values to workplace? According to John Holland, you can adequately link an individual's personality and their values to an organization by understanding what he calls personality job fit theory. So basically, person job fit theory. Now, the basic premise of personality job fit theory is that every individual is unique as far as their personality attributes are concerned. And every role or job that is performed within the context of an organization also has its own role prescriptions. And these role prescriptions differ as you move from one portfolio to the other. So to ensure a congruence between an individual's personality and the job that they perform in an organization, there is the need for you to understand the personality of the individual and that of the job so that you match the two. He is basically saying that it is not every personality that is suitable for the performance of every job. Every job has the kind of personality that will fit it. And so there is the need for you to understand, first of all, get a profile of the various job positions that are there, the people that were successful on it, and their personality. So that when you're embarking on recruitment and selection, you will pick the right people with the requisite personality and then match them onto those portfolios that will be there. So that is the basic premise. Now, Holland presents 6 personality types and proposed that satisfaction and the propensity to leave a job depends on the degree to which individuals successfully match their personality to an occupational environment. So Holland is saying that the chances for an individual to excel on the performance of their job, and also the chances that they will remain after they have been selected, is contingent on the ability to match their personality with the environment within which they are going into. And so what are the 6 personality types that he identified? They include the realistic type, investigative type, the social type, conventional type, enterprising, and artistic type. Okay. Now, so when we say someone has a realistic personality type, these are people that prefer physical activities that require the usage of their skills, strengths, and coordination. Now, such people are characterized as naturally shy, genuine, persistent, stable, and conforming. And they also come across as very much practical or pragmatic. And so occupations that are good fits for the realistic type include mechanics, because in the profession of a mechanic, you get the opportunity to use your skills and your strengths and coordinate a whole lot of machinery or tools. Drill pressing operators, assembly line workers, where you are putting together maybe a product, a farmer, and so on and so forth. Then we have the investigative types. And according to Holland, those that have investigative traits prefer activities that involve thinking, organizing, and understanding. So characteristically, they come across as very much analytical, curious, original, and independent in their thinking. Consequently, professions that are apt for the investigative types include being a biologist, an economist, a mathematician, a news reporter, and these days, an investigative journalist, and so on and so forth. Then we have the social types, and these are the people that prefer activities that involve helping and developing others. So, these people always want to help others, or they always want to impart knowledge in others. So consequently, they are characterized as very much friendly, sociable, cooperative, and understanding. And their level of interpersonal skills is up there. Consequently, they end up being very much good when it comes to professions like social workers, psychologists, teachers, counselors, and so on and so forth, because they are what? Sociable and understanding, or they have a lot of patience to deal with people. Now, let me take you to the part which I like. So Holland is basically saying that if you want to achieve higher level of job satisfaction, lower level of turnover, and higher level of life satisfaction, then in your recruitment and selection exercise, you should be concerned about person organizational fits, and at the same time, person job fits. So we say there is person organizational fit when an individual's personality matches the organizational environment with which they are going to work within. In the same vein, we say there is a person job fit when the personality of the individual matches or is in congruence with the specific task that they are going to perform. Okay, so for instance, we say we are looking for a teacher, and the person comes across as someone who is a social type. This means that the personality of the person being sociable matches the profession that they are going to perform, which is what? The teaching. That will be person job fit. And we will say person organizational fit in the sense that it fits into the educational institution as far as the professional body is concerned. Now, using the base 5 personality terminologies to also illustrate, people high in extroversion fit well with aggressive and team-oriented cultures. So, extroverts tend to always emerge as natural leaders whenever they are performing a group or a team assignment. And they also tend to be very much energized whenever they are working in team situations. Unlike introverts, who always excel when they are given assignments on their own and they are tasked to submit their responses on individual basis. So most of you in this class, in fact, some have even informed me that they are not happy with the way their colleagues conduct themselves when it comes to group assignment, because you realize that some will not be participating at all, but at the end of the day, they will be expecting that their name is put on the submitted paper. Okay? An introverted person will never accept to be in a group discussion, or even when they find themselves in a group assignment, they always feel that they have been overly used, because the extroverts will be all over the place, but not actually contributing to the success of the assignment. Whereas the introverts will be doing it on their own and bringing it on almost all the group discussions. Now, people high on agreeableness match up better with a supportive organizational climate than focused on aggressive. So the agreeable type are the ones that I said you are able to reason easily with them. And the exact opposite is the dissenting type. And they are the ones that flourish under aggressive atmosphere, where there is always a give and take. Then people high on openness to experience fit better in organizations that emphasize innovation rather than standardization. Innovation will give them the room for their creativity to be nurtured. Unlike in situations where standardization is the norm, in such situation, they will feel like trapped in a bottle where they have no space to breathe. Okay, so that is by way of personality and its ability to help you become satisfied or happy in life. Any questions so far? Any questions so far? So Holland is giving us two main things: person job fits, person organizational fits. And by person job fits, we are saying that you have to understand the personality of the person, and you also have to conduct what we call job analysis to understand the knowledge, skills, and abilities or capabilities that is required to perform such a job, so that you will match people with the appropriate personalities onto that job. That is person job fit. Now, in person organizational fit, we are looking at matching people whose core values and their personality matches the general well-being of an organization, so that in the long run, they will be very much satisfied with their life, with their job, and their chances of the chances of they resigning or leaving as a result of not being satisfied will also be reduced. Now let's look at Hofstede's cultural dimensions. Hofstede's cultural dimensions. So Hofstede conducted a study with IBM you know, IBM, they were into computing, and it was a multinational enterprise that had several subsidiaries scattered across the length and breadth of the world. And in some of these subsidiaries, you could have people with different cultural orientations working together to help achieve the strategic objectives of IBM. So J.Ed Hofstede wanted to understand the cultural dimensions that help individuals to flourish in such multinational enterprises. And he was also interested in the differences that each individual from all walks of life bring onto the table as far as their culture and their values is concerned. So what Hofstede did was that he administered a series of interviews and questionnaires to all the people that were working at the parent company, that is the headquarters of IBM at that time. So that was 1965. And also those that were working at the subsidiary level. And fortunately for him, he was able to ascertain responses from people that cut across cultures. So there were Americans, Europeans, Asians, Africans, Australians, and so on and so forth, all bringing on board their perspective as far as their cultural dimensions or cultural values are concerned. And based on the responses that Hofstede obtained, he was able to conclude that irrespective of the multinational context that you find yourself, 5 cultural values or 5 cultural dimensions cut across. 5 cultural dimensions or 5 cultural values cut across. So whether you are working in Zenith Bank Nigeria, Zenith Bank Ghana, MTN Nigeria, MTN Ghana, or any multinational enterprise that has a lot of subsidiaries, and you try to understand the cultural values which is at play over there and how that cultural values shapes the style of thinking and the operation of the people over there, Hofstede is saying that you will end up having 5 cultural dimensions. And these dimensions include power distance, individualism versus collectivism, masculinity versus femininity, uncertainty avoidance, and finally, time horizon, which gives us long-term versus short-term time horizon. Let me quickly add that these 5 dimensions also come in a bipolar format. So for instance, for high power distance, you could score either high or low. And so when you score high, you'll be at the extreme end of the pole. And when you score low, you'll be at the other extreme end of the pole, like I demonstrated with the personality traits. Now, according to Hofstede, power distance refers to the degree to which people in a given country accept that power in institutions and organizations is distributed unequally. So whenever we talk about power distance, we are looking at the gap that exists between superiors and subordinates, the rich and the poor, the haves and the have-nots in a given social context. So because we are analyzing it in organization, that is why I'm limiting it to organizational context. So to what extent do we say that the gap between you and your boss is wide or it is narrow? That is basically what power distance tries to do. And research indicates that in African contexts, power distance between superiors and subordinates tend to be wider. And this even stems from our traditional or cultural practices which can even be traced to the chief's palace. When you are going to the chief's palace, and I will quite here, first of all, you see that sort of reverence we give to our elders or our chiefs in our communities. And sometimes when you are greeting them, you even have to prostrate or bow down as a sign of reverence. That is the sort of power distance that Hofstede is talking about. So when Hofstede says that power distance is high, it is trying to communicate that the gap that exists between those in superior or leadership positions and subordinate positions is what? Wide. Now, conversely, when Hofstede says power distance is narrow, he is trying to say that the gap that exists between the most powerful people and less privileged or powerful in an institution is what? Narrow. Now, a typical example is that in Western context, you can even be calling your bosses by their first names. You can be calling your lecturers by their first names. You can be calling, we suddenly refer to people in Western context by their titles. But in non-Western context like Ghana, because of the higher power distance, when you call your lecturer, who is a professor, if you call him Mr. Augustine instead of Professor Augustine, then you are in trouble. And the reasoning or the underlying explanation to some of the frustrations or why you might be characterized as disrespectful for calling your lecturer by a first name instead of their title is that in our cultural context, according to power distance, according to Hofstede, the power distance is wider. Unlike in Western context where, because power distance is low, it will not be out of place to even find the prime minister of a country riding a bicycle with the general populace, or the prime minister taking the same bus with his colleagues in, with the general population in a city. Okay, so that is about power distance. Now, then the second cultural dimension or the value that Hofstede identified is individualism and collectivism. Individualism and collectivism. Individualism, it simply means me, myself, and I. Me, myself, and I. So people that tend to be individualistic are always self-centered and trying to pursue their own agenda or attain their own achievements. Whereas collectivism has to do with people that operate in group or family or communal situations. So when it comes to self-definitions or self-construct, an individualistic person tend to define themselves by making reference to their own or their individual achievements. Whereas a collectivistic person tend to define themselves by making reference to their other family members, the community where they come from, the achievement that the country or the society they come from has been able to chalk, and so on and so forth. Now, research indicates, in fact, in his seminal paper, Hofstede characterized non-Western contexts or countries like Ghana, China, India as a collectivistic context. And the explanation is that in such cultural contexts, it is very much difficult for people to define themselves without making reference to their family members or the community where they come from. So typical Ghanaian, if you ask the person to tell me about yourself, after mentioning his name, then he will say, I come from. If you are interviewing an Akan, then they will make reference to me or Nana, and so on and so forth. Hofstede will interpret all those connotations or mannerisms as a manifestation of collectivism. And such people tend to define themselves by making reference to the social groupings that they belong to. Now, on the other hand, people that subscribe to the individualistic values are the ones that tend to define themselves by making reference to their own accomplishments. And according to Hofstede, people from Western contexts, such as USA, UK, Australia, and so on and so forth, tend to be more individualistic. Okay. Let me see if I have left anything out. Okay. And that is why the extended family system is markedly pronounced in Ghana or in collectivistic contexts, whereas the nuclear family system is very much pervasive in individualistic contexts. Okay, now let's go to masculinity versus femininity. Masculinity, femininity. In masculine cultural contexts, Hofstede is of the view that such cultures actually subscribe to masculine attributes. So those masculine cultural contexts are named masculine because they tend to embrace or subscribe to cultural attributes or traits of men, such as wealth acquisition or the acquisition of material things in life, being more aggressive in your pursuits. Okay, all these are attributes of men. And so those cultural contexts that try to empower people by such attributes are characterized as masculine contexts. So the reverse is true. In feminine cultural contexts, there are those cultural contexts that tends to sensitize people to accept feminine or feminine gender roles as the norm. So these include being much more empathetic, sensitive to the concern of others around you, and those motherly feelings. Now, these have huge implications when it comes to the practice of international HRM, which I will introduce you to very soon. So let's look at uncertainty and avoidance. Uncertainty avoidance. This also has to do with the degree to which people in a country prefer structured over unstructured situations. To what extent do people in your country prefer structured or predictable situations as opposed to unpredictable or unstructured situations? And right from the word go, uncertainty avoidance has to do with risk taking. So in structured situations, when you are taking risk, your chances of success is very, very high. Likewise, in an unstructured situations, when you are taking risk or you are gambling, the chances of your success is low. Now, Hofstede is saying that across the globe, certain cultural contexts have been programmed to be very much comfortable to be working in structured situations as opposed to unstructured situations. Now, research indicates that people that score high on uncertainty avoidance are the risk aversion. So when we say someone averse risk, it means they try to run away from risk. Okay, such people, whenever they find themselves in an unpredictable situation, then they are very much uncomfortable. Okay, conversely, people that score low on uncertainty avoidance are the risk takers. In other words, they prefer to take risk irrespective of the unprogrammed or unstructured circumstances they find themselves in. Now, typically, Ghana is labeled as a risk-averse cultural context. In other words, when it comes to taking risk in Ghana, Hofstede labeled us as the risk-averse cultural context because we are always pessimistic whenever we find ourselves in an unprogrammed or unstructured situations. And that explains why, for instance, the issue of gambling is very much pervasive when you go to cultural contexts like USA. In fact, they have a whole, if you go to a place like Las Vegas, things like casino is the order of the day. But pursuing such a career or an activity in Ghana, you will be looked at with a different spectacle. You can be construed as someone who is abnormal. Even though recent research is indicating that the current youth is tilting towards the risk-taking type, simply because the issue of betting, those sports betting, is currently gaining roots in Ghana. Now, the last dimension that Hofstede introduced is what he calls time horizon. And in this time horizon, you can get short-term and long-term time horizon, which has to do with your orientation towards reward and performance. Now, long-term time horizon or long-term orientation simply means that your reward is in heaven. And irrespective of how you work hard now, you anticipate or look forward to be paid in the near future. So you are working hard now, but you are expecting to gain your reward in what? Future, in the long term. Whereas short-term orientation also indicates that you want to gain your reward now, not in future. So having worked tirelessly and chalking enormous success for your organization, you want to be recognized and acknowledged for your contribution to organizational success. Now, all these 5 cultural dimensions have their own implications for the conduct of international business. So let me use power distance to illustrate power distance. Now, we are saying that power distance refers to the degree to which people in a country accept power in institutions and organizations as distributed unequally. So to what extent is power equally or unequally distributed? Now, I am saying that in Ghana, right from the sort of chieftaincy we have to the sort of leadership arrangement we have in the classroom, there is always a gap between your teacher, the teacher and the student. There is always a gap between the leaders and the followers, the rich and the poor. Accordingly, we have been mentally programmed to accept such gaps as the norm. In other words, when as a member of an organization or an employee of an organization, when your superiors call you into a strategic decision to assist them, a strategic meeting, to assist them to take a decision, because of the higher power distance, there is the likelihood for you to feel that they are setting you up to fail. In the sense that you have it in your mind implicitly that that strategic table is not your place. And that is how power distance influence us psychologically to be uncomfortable when we find ourselves in situations that challenges the norm we find around in our environment. So that is power distance. Now, assuming an American is given the same opportunity to be on the decision-making table at the strategic level, I'm referring to an American employee who is not part of the strategic managers, but who has been invited because of some ideas they've been hearing about him to come and make a contribution over there. Such a person will not feel intimidated or feel that they are being set up to fail, simply because in their cultural context, the power distance is what? Narrow. And so it will even energize them to deliver at that particular level. And so that is how implicitly these cultural dimensions influence our behavior. Now, the same can be said about masculinity and femininity. I indicated that in masculine cultural context, they try to imbibe in the populace that masculine gender attributes should be the norm. So you have to be very much aggressive. You have to be gregarious. Acquisition of wealth is the order of the day, and so on and so forth. Assuming you grew up in such a cultural context, and you find yourself working in a feminine cultural context, which is the exact opposite. So a place like Norway, where feminine gender roles are rather subscribed to as the norm, you are likely to come across as what? An aggressive person, even though such a cultural context welcomes someone who is very much sensitive and empathetic to the other, whether you are a man or a woman. So these are some of the implications of the cultural dimensions as far as international HRM is concerned. Now, let me do the last one, which is time horizon. We are saying that in long-term time horizon, the individual expects their reward to be what? In heaven, or to be paid in long term after delivering or contributing to organizational success. Whereas in short-term horizon, the individual expects to be rewarded immediately after they have contributed to organizational success. Now, what is the implication? Assuming I am coming from a cultural context in which the short-term time horizon is the order of the day, it implies that having contributed to organizational success, I expect to be recognized and rewarded accordingly. And if this does not happen, it will affect my morale. Now, it also implies that irrespective of your longevity in the organization, if at the end of the day we realize your contribution to organizational success is negligible, because we are operating with the short-term time horizon, you will not be rewarded. You realize that all the young guys that come in will be surpassing you to get higher positions and portfolios, whereas you will still be there, even though you have been in the organization for a long time. Okay, so these are some of the implications of the cultural dimensions. Any question? This one is very much important to me. It's even examinable, so you better ask your questions. Any question? Hello, any question? Any question? Are you there?
We are there,
Yeah, we are
sir.
here. No question.
Hey, no, are you sure no question? Hey. Okay, so who can explain power distance for me? Alice, are you trying to explain power distance? If you don't have a question, I have a question. So what does power distance mean? What does power distance mean?